Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This week, I am delighted to welcome Scott Sanders, creator of the Disney Cruise Line blog. My first involvement with Scott was when I featured him in The Joy of Cruising in a section called Cruise Bloggers, The Reader's Choice, comprised of finalists and winners in the 10 Best Reader's Choice Best Cruise Blogger, sponsored by USA Today. Scott won for the Disney Cruise Line blog. Since 2012, the Disney Cruise Line blog and accompanying podcast has been an unofficial source of Disney Cruise Line news and information and a place where fans can share Disney cruise experiences. I have stated to the various individuals that I featured in the Joy of Cruising books that we are forever connected. Many years from now, a reader will pick up a book written by me and featuring one of them. Well, Scott and I share a special bond. In addition to the Joy of Cruising profile, Scott's photo of Disney magic against the midnight sun in Reykjavik, Iceland, is on the cover of my new book, The Joy of Cruising Again. When I included the photo and its backstory in The Joy of Cruising 5 years ago, I told Scott it was the most stunning cruise ship photo I had seen. Little did I know it would become an indelible part of my writing journey years later. Scott lives with his family, his wife Emily, and daughter Isabelle in Celebration, Florida, known as the community Disney built. Celebration is 5 miles from Disney World and was originally developed by the Walt Disney Company. Scott and Emily were married in a Disney wedding at Walt Disney World Resort. Half of their honeymoon was at Disney World and the other half on Disney Wonder. He was destined to create the Disney Cruise Line blog. Scott, welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
So how you doing?
I'm great.
How's the family?
Family's doing wonderful. Just celebrated a 16-year-old's birthday party on a cruise. After a cruise, can't be any better.
Great, sweet 16. Well, I will ask you about that cruise in a minute.
Okay.
So I shared some background with the listeners. Fill us in on some details. Where you're from? How did you get involved with blogging and podcasting? Anything you would like to share?
Well, I live in Celebration, Florida, just down the street from Walt Disney World. Approximately about an hour drive to Port Canaveral, convenient to cruising, where we end up cruising a lot from. Also, not a terrible drive down to Miami or even Fort Lauderdale, even shorter. Got into blogging. It was kind of random. I made a joke. We'd started cruising. I was sharing photos online, on Flickr, on message boards and whatnot. And I made a joke one night, I should just start a website. Sitting on the couch, checked out the domain name. I think one time I checked, it was not available. Somebody else had it. I think when I got a little more serious one night, I checked again, it was available. So I decided to go for it, give it a go. More so to stop paying, I was paying hosting for photos elsewhere online to share photos. So it just seemed to be better to pay for my own hosting. Then I could learn to create websites, dabble learn a new skill, if you will. And so it seemed like a creative outlet. Started out mostly, from photography and sharing trip reports on message boards. Kind of evolved from there.
Now, what year was that?
2012.
So were you one of the first Disney Cruise Line bloggers?
Possibly. In terms of specific to Disney Cruise Line, yes, I would say. There may have been some attempts beforehand, before I even got into it, or in the early days, because I'm pretty sure the domain name I have now was previously used. I don't know if it was active. It's hard to tell, but a lot of in the Disney fan community, there's a lot of, theme park centered blogs out there, but nothing that focuses solely on the cruise line like we do.
Uh-huh. So when was your first Disney cruise? How old were you?
I was in my early mid 20s. It was actually a honeymoon cruise. Totally not random, but we got married at my wife and I got married at Walt Disney World, and part of our honeymoon stay was a 3-night cruise on the Disney Wonder out of Port Canaveral. So back then, it was it's 2005. So still kind of early on for Disney Cruise Line. They just had the Magic and Wonder. So that's all they had were the 2 ships. And it was not much information. I believe I know my wife had a travel guide for the parks, but I don't think there was much information for the cruise line back then that was readily available. Internet was still, in its infancy in terms of travel related content and ease of access, finding information like that. So there wasn't much to go on. And that 3-night cruise, I tell you, it was a whirlwind, and it was way too short to even figure it out.
Yeah, I recall coming back to me now for the book. You were in the first cruise book, The Joy of Cruising. I recall you didn't exactly get hooked on that first cruise.
No, it was so quick, so fast. It was kind of out of my element. We just got married, or it was a destination wedding in Florida already, so we're kind of out of our own elements. It was get to this, get to that. It's kind of scheduled, and then boarding a cruise ship for the first time with absolutely no idea what to expect in terms of like the scheduled dining and the shows and the activities and the ports. It was just all new to me at the time, and it took a while to let it all sink in. It wasn't until that first cruise with our daughter when I really got hooked.
Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I would say she was maybe about 3 years old. Kind of waited until she was old enough to actually get to enjoy some of the use spaces on the ships versus just going around with mom and dad the entire time. We had been going to Walt Disney World with her since she was like 9 months old. So she was well versed in meeting the characters, and she loved doing that. So it was an easy transition, and actually much easier at the time to meet characters on the ships for her. So she just loved it, and having that joy of, seeing the excitement through a child's eyes like that this makes you want to go back for more.
The way that I learned about you, I was taking my grandchildren on their first cruise, and I wanted their first cruise to be on Disney. And so I was doing some research on YouTube, and I saw a video of your daughter. I don't know if it was her first cruise, I doubt it, but it was a picture of, or video featuring your daughter enjoying, what's it called, Aquamouse?
That's on the new Wish, but it was possibly the Aqueduct on the Disney Dream or Disney Fantasy.
Aqueduct, that's what it was. Aqueduct, yeah. And
I remember that video.
and so when I showed that to my granddaughter, she just lit up. But so I had 2 reactions to that video. Number one was, it really got my granddaughter juice for the cruise. But I also decided I'm going to get a hold of you and see if you want to be in my book.
Awesome.
So between when that first cruise, your honeymoon cruise, and then when you started your blog, I trust you went on a series of Disney cruises, and you decided this is your line.
Yeah, definitely. We were cruising a few times before the idea of even starting the website came up, because it was constant sharing of cruise photos, cruise experiences on Flickr and message boards, and it kind of naturally transitioned into just creating the website. So there was, thinking we started maybe that first cruise with our daughter in 2009, 10. I have to look back at the dates. So it was definitely at least 5 years since our honeymoon before we went on a cruise again. And then maybe 2 or 3 years of cruising that led up to the creation of the website.
So in the introduction, I mentioned that the cover of my new book, The Joy of Cruising Again, which will be out any day now, the cover photo is my favorite cruise ship photo of all time. and you are the author, or you are the photographer. It's your photo, the Disney Magic Against the Midnight Sun in Reykjavik, Iceland. And I recall from interviewing you 5 years ago, there's quite a story behind that photo. Talk about that.
Yes, that cruise was in the summer of 2015. I remember it might have been July 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I remember we celebrated the 4th of July on a cruise ship in Iceland. It was strange. It was about that time of the year. So going back to maybe 2014, maybe late 13, when that cruise was first announced, we had been talking about, doing something different other than the Bahamian and Caribbean itineraries we had been doing to date. So it was either a European cruise or an Alaskan cruise, for that 2015 summer. And it was an 11-night itinerary that popped up. And if you're going to make the commitment to travel overseas for a cruise, you might as well make it worth it. So that 11 night, I was like, wow, Iceland. That sounds like a really cool place to visit. And then get to visit Iceland on a cruise is even better. So we kind of settled on that cruise, having a lot of great places. And then the more I started looking into Iceland, I discovered the Midnight Sun. I was like, wow, wouldn't it be great? And the itinerary the ship stayed overnight in Reykjavik. So we got there on one day. It was a 24-hour gangway, so you could come and go until we left the following afternoon, early afternoon. So it was pretty neat. And I jokingly said to some friends, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go sleep on a bench out in Reykjavik because I'm sure my family is going to go to sleep at a respectable time, and I want to go out. And I had aspirations, and I never knew, you can never control the weather and things like that. So you had no idea what kind of photo opportunity I'd get, but I went out there early. I kind of scouted the area, tried walking around, hung out with some fishermen that were fishing off the rocks on one end of the pier. Sure enough, I faked a sleeping on the bench photo just to complete the joke with the friends. But it was a stunning evening. I can't believe what I had in my head, what I was hyping up on that, Midnight Sun photo that I was going after.
Uh-huh.
The actual photo exceeded my internal hype and expectations for it. So that moment kind of made the trip, in itself of a, the big checkbox that you want to see or accomplish, sightseeing or, something like that, that really hit that checkbox for me.
Well, for the listeners who have the first book, The Joy of Cruising, there's a photo in Scott's chapter of him laying on the bench. And then there's that wonderful photo of the Disney Magic. And of course, if you don't have the first book, just get the new book, The Joy of Cruising again, and you'll see that photo in vivid color on the cover. So I know that this is kind of like asking someone, who's your favorite kid. Talk about a couple of your favorite Disney cruises, besides obviously the one in Iceland, because of that wonderful photo, and I'm sure it was a wonderful cruise all around. But talk about some other highlights.
Thinking of a cruise highlight, it's kind of hard, and been blessed to go on 33 cruises now, 32 Disney cruises, and one other. So there's a lot in between. It's hard to pick, like you said, one. When I really think about what stands out, it's kind of those firsts. So first cruise, the honeymoon cruise, that first cruise, just a, cruise with, first time with our daughter. And then kind of like the first time we've gone to a significant new destination, like going to Alaska for the first time, going to Europe for that 11 night we just talked about. That Alaska one was gorgeous because we did a 9-night that went up to Hubbard Glacier. So we got to sit outside the glacier and just enjoy nature's beauty for like an hour or so. It was just, gorgeous sights. Not something, when you think of cruising, it's, what instantly comes to your head is Caribbean, Bahamas, sun, beaches, swimming activities. But there's really so much more cruising can offer to kind of get a sampling of the different world destinations. And so those first time going to Alaska, first time going to Europe on a cruise, just kind of opened up my world travel, journal, if you will, expanded it greatly. Just having those first impressions, like, wow, I'd really love to come back here and, like come visit this port area, this region for a little bit longer, maybe on a land vacation. So it's those kind of trips that, they're the first that, sparks, that future travel or, urge to travel back there, or things like that. Not necessarily, one specific cruise, but more like when it comes to answering the highlights, I think of the highlights of, those firsts. And then more recently, I was privileged to be invited to the christening of the Disney Wish. And then a few weeks later, we did sail on the maiden voyage of the Wish. So that was my first maiden voyage opportunity since I've started the website. So that was fun to be on, one of those.
Have you been back to Alaska?
We've been twice. We've done the 9-night twice because kind of, again, traveling from Florida, might as well make it, worth the time away from home. So,
well, I kind of perked up when you mentioned Alaska. In about 3 weeks, I am going on my very first Alaska cruise.
Ooh, an early one. That should be fun.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a long cruise, 16 days. It's a combination. It's actually Hawaii, Alaska. So,
oh, wow.
At the end of April, we go to Hawaii, and then there's 6 sea days up to Alaska, and then we go to all of the the key stops in Alaska. So give me one can't miss restaurant or excursion or experience in Alaska.
We walked up. If you can just enjoy the beauty of the glaciers somewhere and just watch, them calve into the water, that thunderous sound that, is emitted by that is, just nature doing its thing for, you can't fake it. You can't, it's not a manufactured port adventure where everything's created by the tour guides to make it look awesome and everything. This is just something that's natural beauty at its finest. Just sit back. It's a serene experience. Just sit there, relax, have your moment of zen and just watch nature run its course.
Now, I just learned something. I've seen many photos of the glaciers, but you just said something about a thundering sound.
Yes.
Say some more.
The videos do not do it justice. It sounds like a low rumble thunderstorm where it's constantly rumbling. It's not necessarily a big cracking, thunder with, that's kind of associated with lightning strikes, that crack and the boom, but like a low bass, slow moving sound. It just doesn't get picked up in video, normal videos. It's fascinating.
I'm so glad you shared that because that would have caught me by surprise to discover it myself. Let's shift a little bit to talk about other cruise lines. Now, I was going to ask you, because I remember I asked you this when I interviewed you 5 years ago, will you consider ever cruising on another line? You hadn't at that point, obviously. And you just mentioned you have 33 Disney cruises and one on another line. So you made the jump. Tell me about that one.
Yes, there was actually a plan in place to kind of do research trips, if you will, focused out of the different options at Port Canaveral for alternatives, kind of see what's out there. Because when you've done over 30 cruises on one specific line, that's all I knew. So I didn't have an idea of how things were done across the industry. I could read it online, but sometimes you just have to experience it yourself to really understand how things are and how it fits within the way you enjoy cruising. So the idea was to go on a couple of the ships that sail out of Port Canaveral that, have a lot of crossover, targeting the same, family, dynamic that Disney, has. So we were scheduled to go out on a cruise. We were packing our bags. We were recording a podcast with another cruise blogger. And after we ran some errands, we came home to find out the cruise industry was shutting down. And because of, I think our cruise was going out within 24 hours, they were allowing the current day cruises to depart, but not the next day cruises to depart. before they shut down. And it was just a couple of years of just trying to shuffle things around. The ultimate, the plan I had was to have two different ship experiences out of Port Canaveral, and then that would culminate with the Disney Wish maiden voyage. So our little worldwide issue kind of pushed behind the plans we had. So it's kind of resetting. We've just got off the one. It was the Carnival Mardi Gras 7-night Eastern Caribbean cruise, and then we'll do one more out of Port Canaveral on another cruise line in a year, and hopefully resetting the pattern that will lead up to the maiden voyage of the Disney Wish, the Disney Treasure. And we can kind of, reset the whole plan of having a comparative, options or insight of how two different cruise lines do things compared to Disney, with, the angle on the family aspect of cruising that Disney garners.
Now, I'm not asking you to compare to Disney, but what were your impressions of Mardi Gras?
Quite different, but also similar. It's, so that was eye-opening. There were things I liked. I really enjoyed how the dining works with the main dining room that you're assigned to in a time. We did not choose the dine any, or I'm not sure the actual verbiage, the dine anytime or dine at your option. We just stuck with a time. But then it was nice a couple nights where we chose one of the various restaurants that were available just to walk up or get a time for. And it was nice for the variety. So you weren't necessarily locked into a 5:00 dinner and a 6:30 or 7:30 show, or 8:00 show cycle where you're kind of relaxing all day, but then at dinner time things get scheduled on you and you're kind of in a tract. So it was nice. I like the spontaneity of it all, to where if you just don't feel like going to your scheduled restaurant, you can just walk around. There's plenty of options. In fact, most if not all the food that we've restaurants that we went to on board were great. No complaints on the food. So it was nice.
Did you and Isabelle ride the roller coaster?
We did. That was really fun.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know you get to go around twice, so that was a bonus. Thought it was just kind of one loop, and I was like, oh, that's going to be really short. And no, we got to go around twice, and it was really cool. We had just recently had the opportunity to do a pass holder preview of the Tron Light Cycle run at Magic Kingdom, which was, similar in that it's a motorcycle kind of ride like Bolt. So it was almost a direct comparison. And just being out over the sea, kind of over the sea as you're sailing around it with those, views of the ocean. It was just neat. And the ability to control your speed throughout was also fun.
Yeah, I went on Mardi Gras last year with my granddaughter, the same granddaughter who was impressed by Isabelle riding Aqueduct. I usually cruise with her, but because of that little worldwide event that you alluded to earlier, we hadn't cruised together for 3 years, and we went on Mardi Gras mainly because of Bolt. I wanted to ride Bolt with her, and we loved it. She drove, and I understand you can control the speed, and she was a speed demon. It went a little faster than I expected.
Yeah, that accelerates pretty quickly.
Yep. So back to Disney Cruise Line blog. How can we follow the Disney Cruise Line blog on social media and the web?
DisneyCruiseLineBlog.com is the home for everything. It's the main site, main avenue to everything. We're on Twitter at the DCL blog, on Facebook at Disney Cruise Line blog. Same with Instagram, Disney Cruise Line blog on Instagram. It's about all for social media. It's a lot of effort without having, a big team around to handle different things like that. It's just keep it simple.
So let's talk a little bit about the future. What do you have booked?
Oh, well, we're finally, and here's another one that we're finally going to Greece this summer on a Greek Isles cruise. That was one of those I think we started planning 2018 or 19 for 2020. And it's just kind of been, those plans got derailed and we're waiting for things in the port communities to be normal. You don't really want to go on a big trip like that and not be able to see and do everything due to, crowd limitations in places, and maybe venues are still closed or not opened or have limited times and whatnot. So I think this year we're headed back out to Europe and finally get to check off a new a new region with the Greek Isles. So that'll be a lot of fun. Coming up in October, we're doing another group cruise, DCL Blog group cruise. Just happens to leave on Friday the 13th, so it plays well with the Halloween theme.
Well, you actually anticipated a question I was going to ask. Had you ever done a Disney Cruise Line blog group cruise?
We had to reset a couple times, so the numbers are off. I think this will be our fourth.
Oh wow! Well, you have some experience.
We just did last November. We had a group cruise with the Christmas festivities on the Disney Wish.
Oh wow, that sounds wonderful.
It was a lot of fun.
Best wishes with your group cruise and especially with your Greek Isles cruise. Greek Isles is on my bucket list. Speaking of which, what's on your bucket list?
I still have those transatlantic, Panama Canal, trans-Pacific cruises, those major repositioning cruises with a lot of sea days. Those are, huge time commitments. They're mostly, upwards to 14, 15 nights. So it's a good 2-week period that you got to block out, plus a couple extra days for travel here and there. Just finding that time. And it hasn't worked out for our family because of the constraints of the school schedule with our daughter. And it's one of those, it's just finding the right time, our window of opportunity before school started. We weren't to that point in our cruising yet, where we're still focused on the, 4-night Bahamian or the 7-night Eastern or Western Caribbeans. So it's one of those that it's still there. I know they've been doing them forever. So it's not a uncommon cruise for folks, but it's just one that we have not been able to do. And I just love sea days. I'd love to travel across the ocean on a ship, either way. And, I'd love to go through that experience in the Panama Canal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Scott, before we let you go, a couple of fun cruise questions. And then perhaps an oddball question. It's not cruise related. So the first cruise question, and this is really for me to get some ideas. What's your favorite cruise drink and cruise dish?
Those are tough for me personally because I'm willing to try any drink or food once. So I often go out and sample new things that might be on menus to give it a try. So I don't often get back to tried and true favorites. In terms of tried and true favorites, I kind of stick with beer and wine. I'll maybe get a old fashioned here and there.
Okay.
They offer some unique twist on it, but I don't have a personal favorite, like quote unquote drink of the day, special of the day kind of drink. I mean, culinary treat in terms of a whole meal would have to be our dinner experiences at Remy on the Dream and Fantasy and Enchanté on the Wish. Those are just, coming from in France, that created from a Michelin chef, really, really picky eater. I've expanded, I've opened my mind. And cruising helped a lot because there's so much food available and you have the opportunity to sample so many things that, you wouldn't necessarily order off a menu at a restaurant or decide to make it home because, of your personal limitations and, boundaries that you've set. Having the cruise experience open my mind to different culinary options has been great.
You sound like you're a bit of an adventurous eater. You said you're willing to try things.
Adventurous to a point. There are things I don't like mushrooms. Don't know why. I don't like mushrooms. I'm also limited. I have a shellfish allergy. So a lot of the very unique dishes that you find often have a shellfish kind of component to it, so I can't necessarily try those, but they look gorgeous plated, and the rest of the family enjoys it. So,
the second cruise question is, what's your most memorable or funniest or most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Let's see. I can kind of wrap this all into one port day. Last 9-night Alaskan cruise, one of the days we went to Sitka, Alaska. And we were just traveling around. We had we were on, I think, a bus tour or a van tour to a couple different places. And we had some time to walk around the town. Walked around. I walked into a thrift shop. We walked around. It's kind of neat to go into places like that. We walked in, we walked around. Nothing. Something caught my eye in the corner. I was like, I don't want to carry that around all day. Don't want to carry it around all day. But the price was so good, I wanted to carry it around all day. I was like, oh, if we come back, nobody buys it, it's still there, I'll buy it, and I'll figure out how to get it home. So we had a great day in port. We go back, and time's running close. There was a shuttle bus from the downtown area back to the cruise port that we had to get on. To my surprise, it was still there. It's a collector's item, a limited collector's edition of the Die Hard movie box set. So it has all the Die Hard movies in it, and it's the Nakatomi Plaza Tower. I actually have it on my shelf exactly where I said I wanted to put it in my office. It sits there. It lives there. It's so silly. It's a plastic model of a building with a Blu-ray box set in the base. And it was listed, I think, as $10. I think because it was so in the thrift store for so long, when they actually rang it up, it was $5.99. It's about, a foot and a half tall, and I had to bring it home. So here's me now carrying this, what looks to be like a toy model through the town into the bus. And then the embarrassing part was that we were the last bus, or nearly the last bus, to get back to the port. And there was a line to get back on the ship. I think we had about 20 minutes before the all aboard time. And we just kind of sat there because the line was long. And we ended up being, I think the last group on the gangway back to the ship, carrying my treasure under my arm, about right as the all aboard time hit, with the cruise director and some other officers following along and trying to get the last couple people that were still making their way from the bus that was bringing them back over to the port. So it was.
Oh, that's nice. Now I was stuck on $5.99 because I bought a box set, a Blu-ray disc set of the Die Hard movies. It didn't come in that packaging, which I regret. And all I can tell you is it costs a whole lot more than $5.99.
I did the same exact thing months before. I think it was one of those annual deals, shopping deals. Flash sales, and I think I paid about $20 for it. I couldn't pass it up. I wanted the box. I always wanted that tower, but I think at the time that was close to $200, if not more, just for the, piece of plastic. And I was like, I don't want it that bad. But $5.99, I'll figure out how to get it home. And luckily, one of our carry-ons we used to bring 2 bottles of wine with a carry-on allotment. So those 2 bottles of wine made room for the tower.
Perfect. So the oddball question is, now I know that you have a following, and let me say welcome to the Disney Cruise Line blog fans who are listening. Share one thing that my listeners and your fans don't know about Scott.
This might seem interesting, but I have a college degree in meteorology that I never use.
Well, now, not Disney, but there is a cruise line that has a full-time meteorologist. Yes. I actually have reached out to him about being on the show, but maybe you can combine your passions or combine your cruising passion with your education. I will tell you,
I would have to go back to school and start over again, because while I still have some of the textbooks over on the bookcase, my knowledge and just how technology and computer models have advanced over those probably a solid 2 decades now, close to it, I wouldn't even know the first thing about it now. Probably I would have to start all over again. But it was fun. It was interesting. It's intriguing. I get back into it seasonally for. It's not the best topic to talk about in terms of cruise, but hurricane season, living in Florida, and how it impacts us here, even locally, inland, but also how it impacts the cruise lines and the port destinations. So, it offers a little bit of insight. I try not to give any forecasting advice, from what I interpret from the Hurricane Center, just because that's so, I'm so far away from my degree. Those things are so dynamic and change so quickly that I'm not about to put, well, here's what I think on the line.
Yeah, I know all about hurricanes in Florida. When I interviewed you 5 years ago, I was living in Florida, and I still think back to, I get the names, I can't remember the name. I think it was Hurricane Irma. We went 9 days with no power, obviously no internet, and that's the part that really drove me up a wall. In the middle of August, and I had put hurricane shutters on
Right.
the house, and my wife couldn't take the total darkness, so she made me remove the very bottom just so that a little bit of sunlight could get in the house. So, Scott, finally, we're going to put you to work. Please announce this week's winner of a copy of either The Joy of Cruising or my second book, Cruising Interrupted.
This week's winner is Chad Robinson. Congratulations.
Chad is a member of the Joy of Cruising podcast Facebook group, so I will follow up with Chad shortly after this airs. Listen, it has been wonderful having you. Sounds like you have some great plans in the not too distant future. So maybe after you do the Greek Isles, we can have you back and you can give us a trip report and talk about some other things. But I really enjoyed talking to you. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to use your wonderful photo on my new book. As I said in the introduction, Scott, we are forever connected.
Thank you very much for reaching out originally, inviting me to be part of your first book, and I'm beyond honored to have the photo on the cover of your book. It's fascinating. Thank you very much, and absolutely, I'll come back.
Great. Well, thank you, and give my best to your family, and take care.
Will do. Thank you. Same to you.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Great.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted can be ordered at the link on the joyofcruisingpodcast.com, each for $16.99 plus shipping. Order the soon-to-be-released The Joy of Cruising again, also at thejOyofcruisingpodcast.com for $18.99. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. Again, the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast. Enter to win a copy of The Joy of Cruising or Cruising Interrupted while supplies last at thejOyofcruisingpodcast.com by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or both to increase your chance to win. A winner will be announced on each show. Please leave us a review and tell a friend about us. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed the brief escape to the ocean. See you next week. Exciting news, passionate cruisers. The Joy of Cruising Again book was just released. Order the ebook at your favorite online retailer. The paperback can be ordered by copying the web address listed at the podcast website, www.thejOyofcruisingpodcast.com. Don't forget to use the coupon code Joy of Cruising Podcast to get $4 off. We think you'll enjoy the new book as much as Paul enjoyed writing it, and we would love to hear your comments at the Joy of Cruising Again Facebook page or at the Joy of Cruising Instagram page. Thank you.